Hey guys, this is Ken Spangenberg. I'm here today with Yankees minor league hitting coach Casey Dykes. Casey, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Appreciate you having me on here.
No problem. What are you doing to keep yourself busy?
Well, I got two kids, 3 and 18 months, so that's kept me plenty busy. Have got a little insight into the daily life of my awesome wife, who usually is spending all this time with them. When work is in session and when I'm at the field and all that. So it's been really neat though. Getting to see both of them are at a cool age where they're moving around and getting into everything. But it seems like every day they're picking up something new and getting to be a part of that and really see it firsthand. Every day has been pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one blessing to what's going on. It's definitely a lot more family time than we'd be spending with everybody, especially in the spring. So, just a crazy dad question,
Yeah.
So I'm sure these guys are starting to hit. What kind of stuff are you doing with them in the backyard?
Yeah, so my 3-year-old is throws right, hits left,
Nice.
so that worked out well. It looks like
So
the
that wasn't
18
on
month.
purpose.
Honestly, no, not really. Just kind of, I mean, he's been around it. Like I think he was 6 days old when we were in Virginia. I was at BMI at the time. He was 6 days old when he went to his first baseball game. So he's been around it, his whole life, and just kind of let him see what he was going to do. And everything he does as far as riding and picking up a ball and throwing and all that is all right-handed. But for whatever reason, he decided to hit left-handed, and I'm not going to change it. So I'm all on board with that. And then 18-month-old Cash, Jet's the oldest, and Cash is my youngest. He's doing everything right-handed. And he's starting to pick it up. He was hitting off a tee yesterday and swinging it a little bit. He didn't hit the ball often, but at least he's trying to catch up to his older brother. So it won't be too long before
Did,
they're doing it together.
I'm sure. Do you coach them up at all, or do you let them just have fun and try to hit the ball far?
I don't know if you call it coaching. I try not to give him too much. Definitely not with my 18 month. Like my 3-year-old's getting to the age where, like he's starting to ask questions and, watching stuff on TV and wants to do this or that. And like the other day, he'd been watching Rookie of the Year. That's been like our movie of the week. This last week or two. And he started to get this like King Griffey kind of bat wiggle going, and just kind of had some rhythm and created it from watching it. And I was like, oh, that's awesome! Like I love it, And I don't do a lot, as far as telling him what to do or what not to do. Mainly just try to tell him. I give him loud bats and loud balls because he likes loud noises, and if he likes to hear that noise be as loud as possible, then he's going to swing harder and he's going to want to hit it farther. And, we throw in the backyard. We got like a plastic fence, and, I give him all kinds of different balls that are going to make a lot of noise. And he loves to just kind of run and chuck them up against the wall and, throw it hard. So I think that maybe hopefully, eventually maybe that'll translate. I don't know. I just hope he, enjoys the game and enjoys, playing ball, which it seems like he does. So whenever he wants to do it, I'm in a position now where I can go do it with him every day, which has been awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's some good external cueing right there. That's interesting. I might have to steal that one in about a year when Brett gets a
Yeah,
little bit
for sure.
older.
For sure.
But why don't we get back to what we talked about discussing? So
Yeah.
for these people who don't know you, can you give us a little background as far as like your playing career and then how you transitioned into coaching and then what that path looks like?
Yeah, for sure. Originally from Franklin, Tennessee, just south of Nashville. Went to Western Kentucky University to play baseball. Played 4 years there. Went in as like a catcher utility. Ended up catching, playing outfields, DHing as a freshman, kind of just platooning everywhere, and then settled in at third base as a sophomore, and pretty much played every game there for 3 years. Finished up my playing career there. Had a good career. Had some cool things. Went to a regional and won a conference championship, things like that. That was awesome. Still some of my best friends to this day I met there. And then transitioning out of Western Kentucky, I was actually planning on going to play indie ball when I finished up. But my girlfriend at the time was at Western Kentucky. She's now my wife. So I decided when I got offered a coaching job there as a graduate assistant, which was a thing back then, I decided, starting that career, I knew I wanted to do that. So I decided staying there, with her and getting into the profession was a better move for me at the time. And so I stayed in Bowling Green as a graduate assistant. Ended up getting married a year after that when I moved into the volunteer assistant role there at Western Kentucky. From there, I got a chance to go coach with Jonathan Hadra, who's the head coach at VMI. He gave me my first full-time paid position as a recruiting coordinator, hitting coach, catching coach there. So kind of, got just kind of thrown into the fire, honestly. Had never, done a lot of coaching at this point. When I was a volunteer, I was, working with hitters a little bit, really just working with some outfielders and, ordering sandwiches on the road and working camps and, raking the field and doing all that, all the stuff that kind of comes with that job. And, and getting a ton of experience and learning a ton while I was doing it. And the opportunity at VMI came a little sooner than I would have guessed, but ended up being, maybe the best thing that happened in my career. Hage at VMI is one of the best leaders I've ever been around, and his ability to, trust me and kind of just let me take things and run with it and kind of learn on the fly and through some trial and error, but be okay with, me messing up stuff here and there and just figuring it out was crucial, I think, to my development as a coach. So I did that for a few years there, and then got a chance to actually, reunite with, one of my best friends is Jeff Mercer, head coach at Indiana, and go coach with him in his first year as a head coach at Indiana this past year. And so coach there, and then now with the Yankees organization, which kind of came up out of nowhere last summer. Was finishing up the summer and was down. I don't know if the Neshoba County Fair down in Mississippi is a big state fair down there, or county fair down there, and was down there taking I think a 3 or 4 day vacation. We try to get it when we can as coaches, and was down there with some family and got a call from the Yankees organization. At the time had really no interest in getting into pro ball. But when the Yankees call, it's definitely was definitely worth every bit of time to listen and see what was going on. And as I got more exposed to what they were doing and the people I was going to be interacting with, it became the right move for me and my family at the time. And now with the Yankees, would be up in Trenton as the AA hitting coach this year, but obviously we're not rocking and rolling yet. Hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really interesting path. And I didn't realize that you weren't really pursuing a pro job. It just happened, which is awesome. Yeah. So I think because my brother went to VMI for a year and I know a little bit about the culture, I have a question about that one. Yeah. So obviously VMI, for people that don't know, Virginia Military Institute, much different than your typical 4-year school and probably a different environment that you were used to, right?
No doubt. Way different.
We can't tell a lot of the stories, I think, on here. What do you think you learned from that type of environment that helped you as a coach?
I think just being efficient with your time as a coach. Like those guys, they have so many requirements on a day-to-day basis. With obviously the education aspects, being one of the more premier, educations in the country you can get at the college level. And then on top of that, the military aspect and the requirements they have there and everything that comes with that, your time is crunched. You don't have as much time as you would at maybe some other places, other Division I places. And so when you get those guys, you better be ready and you better have a plan of what to do and be efficient with that time, because they're looking forward to that time and they're ready to, get down and play some baseball, but they don't want their time wasted because they can't get it back. And, they know that, once they're done there, they're back and they have other requirements. Like they're not going to be, maybe coming down and have the extra time throughout the day, like maybe you have at some other places, like their time is required, and they're called upon to do other things. And so when you have them, you have to be efficient with your time. And that was something I think I really learned there. And then just the value of relationships. I always knew that, but in the recruiting world, especially at a place like VMI, when there's a lot of reasons that people could say no to VMI, because it is very, very different. You really had to invest in relationships and get to know people and let them get to know you and let them get to know, who they were going to be playing for, and the type of program that Hage was running at VMI, is still running at VMI, that they knew that they were going to get, they were going to get the best bang for their buck, there from a development standpoint, from a relationship standpoint, and ultimately be prepared to, move on and, hopefully play professional baseball when they're done. But if not, then they're going to have an incredible education, and they're going to be ready to take on, whatever it is to come, after college.
Yeah, it's such an amazing opportunity for someone who wants to do something in that avenue. So just looking at like the different stops you've had, I would guess that the player is different, whether it's, Western Kentucky, VMI, Indiana, or you're working with some pro guys. You mentioned relationships are really important. Like how do you build a relationship with your hitters?
Well, I think the easiest way, in a very broad way of saying it, is, getting to know them as humans first. I think the human element of the evaluation process maybe gets skipped more today than it ever has, just because of, all the other different avenues we can go to value a player's worth. But ultimately, like if we're trying to get to know these guys, we have to, be the best at learning how they think, and what makes them tick, and learning what they value. Ultimately what they do and how they play is going to be determined on what they value as a player and what they think is important. So, getting to know that and finding out their background of, where they're from, who they've been exposed to, maybe who's coached them in their past, what's their family life like, how much, if you are somebody who, believes in using, different forms for player development, like, data and things like that, like how much have they been exposed to in the past, or are you about to just blow their brains away if you show them any type of, spreadsheet or numbers. But finding that out, I think, is critical. Just, as you kind of form your own path to, helping them become the best versions of themselves as people and then, as baseball players as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are all great points for sure. So I guess my question, we were joking about it before, I don't really know what your hitting philosophy is, because you're not a guy who's going to sit there on their phone all day and just tweet. So can you take everybody through like just a basic hitting philosophy, then we can dive in a little bit deeper?
Yeah. On it in its most basic form, its most fundamental form, I would say that hitting strikes hard is what the best hitters do the most. So when it comes to the philosophy, I would say that is right up my alley for what we're trying to get guys to do. Obviously, there's a lot of different branches from that, and but really just being that simple with it is that we're trying to get a good pitch, we're trying to put a good swing on it, and ultimately we're trying to hit that ball as hard as we can. Preferably on a line into the outfield or over the outfield fence. And I think that's where that's the most basis of it, most basic version of it. Is I can kind of give you now. Obviously, you can take that and you can run with it a lot of different directions. But I think a lot of times, like when you think about a philosophy, guys will have a really in-depth version of what they're trying to do, and they're trying to get you to do this or that. But what do the best do the most? And for me, that's what the best do the most is they hit strikes, and when they hit them hard, and they hit them into the outfield, they hit them over the outfield fence, and that's productive. That's being productive as a hitter. So I would say that's kind of where it's at. Where that stems from, obviously, is the intent of what you're trying to do. Like I think about my philosophy's definitely changed over the years. Like I think about my philosophy when I was going into VMI and had a chance to run my first offense and work with hitters and really build that culture and create that mindset of what we were trying to do as an offense. Like we went in there and it was a team in 2014 that had hit 11 home runs. In 2015, we hit 60 that first year. So first year there, we hit 60. So the year before I had gotten there, they hit 11. And, honestly, I don't know if like a lot of the things I was doing were the right things or if I would still be doing them the same way. But I do think that like the mindset and the intent that I had, in trying to build that offense, I think like the players really gravitated towards that, and it led to them like having the intention to do what we were able to do. Like we hit 60 that year, and then you look at the years after that. I think so. I was there for four years. We were top 10 in the country in home runs 3 of those years. I think we finished 13 the other year. And honestly, like my philosophy really wasn't great, I don't think, at the time. It was really like it was a lot of things going on. It was really probably confusing. I don't know if I could even put it on one page of paper because there were so many pieces to it. But I do think what was good was the intent and the purpose of what we were trying to do on a daily basis. I think that resonated with the guys, and we were able to kind of cling to that and really be intentional in our work every single day, even if we weren't necessarily working on maybe the right things every day. And I think that holds a lot of weight.
Yeah, for sure. And I know we're going to have coaches that are going to kill me if I don't ask this question to you, but going from 11 to 60 home runs, that's pretty outrageous. What would you contribute to that? Would it be practice planning? Would it be mechanical work? Would it be approach, mindset? Is there one area you think helped the most?
Combination of all of those for sure. But I think it all goes back to, having a purpose for what you're doing every day in that practice, and in that practice plan. And as you're developing that practice design, I think the most important questions are to ask yourself as you're doing that is what do you value and why do you value it? And then like now, how do we go execute that? Right. So, and that may change, like a different group of players or a different team in a different organization or a different program, like they may value different things. But at the end of the day, I think you have to be able to simplify what you value, give a reason for why you value it, and then, obviously put together a plan to go execute whatever that is that you do value. And I think that's where, we valued hitting the ball hard and hitting the ball far. And every single day is in our training, like that was a focus. And there was other parts of our game probably that weren't maybe as good as what I think they could have been now looking back at it. But we did score, a lot of runs, and a lot of them came via the long ball. And that was, that was just kind of who we were, and we were bought into that, and that, progressed over those years, and it continued. And even, back to IU, we were fortunate enough to win a Big Ten championship in the 1 year at Indiana, and set the school record in home runs. And, I think the end of the regular season, we were first. I think technically we finished the year second, but at the end of the regular season, we were first in the country in home runs at Indiana. And, we did things probably way different there than I did the first couple of years at VMI. But at the end of the day, like our intent and our focus and what we were trying to do every single day was very similar. What we did to train that was different. But the purpose of what we were doing on an everyday basis in our practice was the same. And you start to look at those results and how they continued year after year. And I think that overrode, whatever we were doing from a skill development standpoint, even if it could have been better.
For sure. I mean, it always can be better, right?
Right. For sure.
I think that's a really pragmatic way to look at practice planning. I like that. It's, like you said, simple, direct, and it gives you good direction. I didn't realize Indiana led the country in home runs. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. We had some good players, man. Like, we had 7 guys, I think 7 position players off that team ended up getting drafted. Maybe 6 drafted and 1 signed as a free agent. So at the end of the day, like we were really good players. Even at VMI, I think 6 or 7 guys off those teams in those 3 or 4 years, like ended up going on and playing professionally. Just speaking on the position player side. If you really want to boil it down, get really good players, and really good players tend to make you look a lot better as a coach than probably what you really are.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to be a good hitting coach, recruit good hitters.
Absolutely.
Well, and that kind of leads into a different question. So you're out on the road, back in your college coach days. What aspects, what traits are you looking for in a hitter?
I think from an evaluation standpoint, again, it's going to go to what do you value in your program? Like what you recruit is all going to be based off of how you play offense, right? What is your style? If you're a guy that if you like to run and you like to steal bags and that's how you like to produce offense, then you're going to pay attention to that, and you may value that over like the big 6'4" donkey left-handed hitter that's is going to come in and hit 10 or 12 home runs. So I think that's definitely changing for me. It's a lot about athletes, finding athletes. I think the athlete comes first and the skill comes later. In the evaluation process. So for me, it was trying to find, the best athlete we could find with the right type of makeup. And then on top of that, finding someone that we thought was a smart player as well. I think there's a lot of value in finding a player that is not only a really good athlete and tough and, all the things we all want, but also, finding a player that's smart. That's baseball IQ or just, the ability to understand, different types of philosophies, understand what you guys are going to do, and that you can have real conversations with, and he's going to be able to adapt and learn, maybe quicker than some other players. I think the best guys that develop the fastest are not only the best athletes, but they're also the smartest athletes a lot of the time. So trying to find a combination of that, the off the field stuff is like a real thing, finding guys who can take care of their business in the classroom, who, as you talk to, people in their communities or coaches or teachers, whoever it is, like guys that take care of their business off the field. I think that translates onto the field. Those are guys that you can trust, that that you're not going to have to, as a college coach, that you're not going to go to bed every night like thinking about, oh man, like what's this guy doing? Can I trust him? Like, is he going to get in trouble? Am I going to wake up with a phone call? Like, that's just added stress that none of us need as coaches. So, trying to find multi-sport athletes that are good human beings that have a real reputation in their communities. I think that's all kind of falls in that line of what you're looking for as you're going to recruit guys. The skill stuff can come later, right? I think that's where coaching comes in. Like, coaching the skill is what we get paid to do. So I think as you're recruiting, going to find the athlete I think that's why it takes a little bit maybe precedent over the skill itself in a lot of areas.
No, I think that makes complete sense, and honestly, we've heard that a lot so far. So I think one thing that gets lost now, probably just with how easy video is to see and watch, is like the approach and the mental part of the game. For these guys who want to learn more about that, what recommendations do you have? Where do you think they should start, or even just talk about like what your approach would be, as a hitter?
I think your approach is going to be determined on how much conviction you have in it, right? And like our conviction, our confidence in our approach is going to be determined by the way we prepare and the way we practice. So from an approach standpoint, I think there's a lot of different ways. I can't get in, or I could get super detailed on this, and I can't get into some of this stuff. But ultimately, whatever your approach is as a hitter in a game, if you want that to be consistent and you want that to be unwavering, which I think is what we all want, right? We want hitters that are convicted in what they do, that are aggressive and sold out for this approach, and aren't going to let, maybe the different variables that come up in a game, or the different stressors and problems that may show up in a game that's like full of failure and full of situations that are extremely unpredictable. You're not going to let those harm you. I think it comes with developing that in your training environment, going back to the practice plan. Like, how do you create conviction in something? Well, like, you prepare that way, right? So we make our practice setting like the game. You have to create an environment that's individualized towards that person and his approach and what he does well. And we have to train that. And if you're just having success in that training, and then whatever approach you have, it may not be the best approach. If you're always having success in it, like, you need to challenge yourself, because ultimately, especially the higher levels you move up, like, people are going to figure out what you do well, and they're going to figure out what you don't do well, and they're going to start to expose those weaknesses. So being able to get uncomfortable in the way that you practice, building a competitive environment, with that, whether it's you're working on your approach, or you're working on, your swing, or you're working on hitting certain pitches, or whatever it is that your focus is. I think you have to center that around what maybe challenges you in the game, and what you have to get better at to become a better player. And ultimately, that's when you start to see those things start to unfold in the game. If you're just comfortable all the time and you're working on things that you're already good at, I think that leaves a lot of room for error. When you start to face more elite arms and better scouting reports and things like that, and they're able to attack your weaknesses more often.
For sure. And baseball is such a weird sport in that we used to practice completely different from the game. And I think that's definitely one reason why you do have like the 5 o'clock hitters. So I'm not sure if you can talk about this, but in creating a competitive environment in practice, what are some recommendations you'd have for coaches?
I think just, kind of like I said, and I'll let, whoever's listening to this kind of get creative and do whatever they think. I think a lot how I learned this was intuition and trial and error, through the years. And now we have, different ways we can prove this, and there's research done on the best ways to do certain things and all that. And that's all out there for people to find. But I think ultimately, like, the more that we can create game-like scenarios, say what's the best way to, enhance our percent of failure, right? And get better at that. Well, there's probably a right way. We should be failing X amount of time in our practice, or we should be having success this amount of time in our practice. So how do we formulate a practice plan around that's attacking that? And then once a guy, checks that box, and so he's good at this, he's good at hitting breaking balls. So what do we go to next? Or he's good at, doing this drill that I've given him that I think is going to help his swing, or I think it's going to help the way he loads, or I think it's going to help, whatever I want his bat path to do. Like, I got this drill. And so he executes that, and we check that box. Like, I don't think we stop there. I think there's always, different layers to our practice, and that's where the individualization, comes in. When we're training guys, that we have to know what their certain needs are as a hitter. Not every hitter is the same. Not every hitter moves the same. Everybody is a little bit different and has different needs. And, maybe even trying to, get those guys that you have on your team that, you think, or have the same needs, and get them together, right? Like, have them together so they're doing the same things. And then one of them obviously is having success. So what's the other one going to do? Like, they're going to raise the bar, and they're going to try to match that as well. Like, I see it with my 2 kids all the time, right? Like, my 3-year-old can do certain things. Like, he can jump off our couch and land on his feet. So what's my 18-month-old do? He tries to jump off the couch. He can't land on his feet. most, it usually ends up bad. But what he's trying to do, he's just trying to catch up with the next guy, right? So if we can create that environment where it's always a competition, and we're directing that competition towards what this hitter or this group of hitters or this pair of hitters needs, then everybody starts to raise their bar, and they kind of that competitive edge now, you're ingraining it in them without them even realizing it. So I think, from a, practice design standpoint, as you're trying to increase that, I think those are, kind of some ways that you can, go about creating that.
For sure. I think that's really helpful. And I think we both know that at the end of the day, the players are going to be the ones that compete with each other. So it's probably our job to put them in an environment that enhances that ability.
No doubt.
So now I feel like if you go on social media, you see PVC pipes, you see all these crazy different tools.
Right.
If we were going to watch you work with a hitter, are there any ones in particular that you like or that you use more than others?
Again, there is, it depends on the guy. Like it really does. Like it depends on the guy, and there's definitely, I think there's certain things out there right now that maybe, maybe help guys more than others, and I can't get into too much of that. But when it comes to data and technology and tools and all that, I think what's neat about right now is there's no denying that that any of this stuff helps, right? Like I think it all helps in its own way, but I think the separator is understanding maybe who does it help, how does it help them, right? Like who should we use this tool with? How can this tool help this guy? Like and I think that's where a lot of guys are missing the boat. Like it's not can we get can we measure the next thing, or can we, get more data points on this area? Like it's figuring out what really matters, and then just, having full conviction in that, belief in that, and training and using those tools, to help the masses, right? Like to help all our guys, like finding what really helps guys, and then, using that more with guys that maybe move that way, or if, this certain tool helps a guy that maybe moves a different way, then we can find that out, and then we can, kind of prescribe him, whatever tool that is going to help him, go, increase, whatever he's trying to do, on a performance level. I don't know if you were going to kind of go into this or not with the, the data and the, the tech,
right?
and the different tools, but I'm very much, neutral when it comes to, like, I think, they've like kind of crowned the phrase like old school versus new school, right? I'm super neutral when it comes to that, because I think there's benefits in both. I really do. I actually don't say that in like a political way. Like I'll stay in the middle. Like I really do think that there's benefits of both, and I'll give you some. Like I think when you think about like old school, I think the mentality, the way that guys communicated maybe in the past, I think that, like, when you look at most guys who fall under that umbrella of old school, I think they're really good in those areas. And I think there's a lot we can take from that nowadays that can help us. Even like the swing, like when you look at the swing, if you want to look at it from a mechanical side, like I don't think anything in the swing necessarily has changed. I just think what we can prove has changed, right? So like I'm super old school when it comes to like what guys actually did in their swing. Now we can just prove what they did, and we can teach that to more people, right? I think being under the new school umbrella, like being innovative and the ability to adapt, to different environments, and being willing to change. I think we're doing a really good job of that as a whole in the baseball world right now. Like you see, not that it's all right and not that it's all wrong, but like this new era of baseball is doing a really good job of not being scared of change, and adapting to different things that we think may help, and everybody's got it now, right? Like everybody's got tech, everybody's got data, at least in the, definitely in the professional world, even in the college world, like everybody's got data. But again, like it only matters if you can communicate it, and if your players can interpret it, right? So like we all have information, but what we don't all do a great job of is communicating that information and finding an avenue to communicate it to the player to where they interpret it. Because ultimately, like, it doesn't matter what I know or you know or any coach knows. If the player can't interpret it and they can't go and put it into play, then it's a waste, right? It's a waste of time, and that data has done nothing to help the players, which ultimately that's the only thing it's there for, is to help the players.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that it's almost overwhelming, the amount of technology and numbers we have. It's easy to go down that rabbit hole, but at the end of the day, like you're saying, it just matters if you can make the player better. It doesn't matter if you have 1,000 numbers or one number. Are they improving?
No doubt. Like I think that, like, kind of what's going wrong in the data world, even though like I'm all about it, like measuring the right things and having numbers to base things off of. Like, I think it's enhanced our game a ton. But I don't think you should just measure everything because it's measurable either, like that doesn't make sense to me. Like, just because, like, when we think of data, we think of it becomes math, right? And in math, like, there's always a definite answer. And in baseball, you're talking about guys that are that move differently, and you're talking about like movement that is ultimately infinite, right? Like, movement's always changing, because in the game of baseball, there's always going to be different variables or different circumstances that happen. And so, like, the movements are going to change. So if you're just measuring everything because it's measurable, I think you can spend a lot of time focusing on the wrong things, when maybe what happened before or two steps prior to what you're actually measuring, like, ultimately that's what changed this number that now you're measuring. Like, if we just fix that, then this is irrelevant, right? So it's finding the right things to measure that really matter, and leaving everything else to let it happen naturally, because that's what the body naturally does if we're focused on the right things.
No, that's awesome. I really think that's the best way to look at it. So we have some young guys on here too.
Yeah.
What would you recommend them doing right now in their homes to try to get better? Because hopefully we'll be playing baseball in the next few weeks. Do you have any recommendations for these young guys?
Yeah, I think, I know that, a lot of people, just listen to a lot of people talk, a lot of people are talking about, different types of, visualization type stuff, and, training that. I think one of the best ways, like, for us as coaches, a lot of times, like, we get caught up in this, especially in the player development world, like, where we're always trying to, we're really quick to point out, like, the bad stuff, right? Like, we're really quick to find out, well, he doesn't do this well, so we gotta go fix that. We gotta go fix that. We gotta address that. I think what we don't do a great job of all the time is celebrating what guys do well. Like, a lot of guys do things really, really well, but we always focus and talk about, what they don't do well. And I think right now, as guys are at home and they don't have, maybe access to, the facility that they normally have access to, where they're going and working on, certain part of their games that they don't do well, and they're focusing on their weaknesses, and they're trying to get better for the upcoming season and do all that because they're capable of doing that. I think one of the best things we can do right now is watch ourselves have success. I'm sure, now with, Twitter and, or even other people have success with, the access we have to Twitter and to video and things like that. Like, whether it's watching ourselves and saying, watching and putting a highlight reel together of, ourselves hitting a bunch of doubles in the gap, or making diving plays, or if you're on the mound, like, watching yourself, execute a breaking ball over and over and over again. There's like real value in that, and watching yourself have success. And I think too, this is a great time, a really challenging time, to invest in your lifestyle. I think right now, as we're at home, I know for me, this has been a challenge for me, for sure. I've gotten into some way different types of training than I've ever done when I have access to a gym every day. It's a lot harder to turn down, like, the cookies at night while I'm watching Netflix, or whatever it is that's probably not the best for my nutrition and diet. But I think right now is a great time to invest in your lifestyle. And when I say that, it's, your diet, your nutrition, your speed. Like, we can go outside, we can run, we can sprint, you can do things like that. It's very easy. Different types of strength stuff, whether it's body weight or bands, whatever you have at home, like, staying active and working on, different, whether it's range of motion stuff or different movement patterns that you're trying to, continue to make a strength of yours. Hydration, continued education. I know a lot of guys are still doing schoolwork right now. But even education on the game of baseball, right? Like watching games, watching baseball games, watching plays be made in different scenarios, and just educating yourself on that. This is a time where we all have a lot more downtime than we're probably used to. And we can use it in a good way, or we can use it in a bad way. And that's a choice that I think we all have to make during this time, and learning how to be self-sufficient in that, and evaluate ourselves on a daily basis is extremely important. I think when I say that, something comes to mind that was told to me a long time ago. And I think it's been incredible advice for me. Even as I've gotten older, I've used this advice a ton. But somebody told me a long time ago that to take my last week, they were talking to me. They're like, I want you to go home and I want you to do a project. I want you to look at your last week of your life, and I want you to think through the last 7 days. I want you to write down everything you've done over the course of the last 7 days, and how much time you spent doing it. And then I want you to make another list, and I want you to write down, what you prioritize. Like, what are the most important things in your life? And then when you have both of those lists, I want you to calculate up the time you actually spent this last week doing whatever you were doing. And I want you to look at your priority list, and I want you to see how those two mash up. And for me, it was eye-opening because mine didn't mash up. Maybe, hopefully, anybody who's going to try this, hopefully yours matches up, and that's great. But I think for a lot of us, it'd be really eye-opening for us to do that. And I even catch myself, nowadays, if I feel like I'm getting overwhelmed, or maybe I'm focusing on the wrong things, not spending, as much time on things that I know I do prioritize in my life. I catch myself going back to that and thinking, like, am I really spending, like, am I investing the time on a daily basis into things that I say that I prioritize? Because saying them is one thing, actually doing it and sacrificing the time to, whether it's family or it's baseball or it's your school or it's faith or it's, whatever it may be, like any of that stuff. Like, I think a lot of times we can get caught up where we're spending, way too much time on, whatever it may be, video games or Netflix or whatever. And it's taken away from stuff that we say, if somebody was to ask us, hey, what's your top priorities? Like, we're probably not going to say, like, playing Madden. Like, I enjoy playing Madden, but that's probably not number one on my priority list. But I just spent, X amount of hours doing it. And it shows that obviously it was a priority to me. So, I think that's a really good lesson, for guys to kind of try and see what they get out of it.
Yeah, I think that would be a huge ego check for the most of us. I feel like, especially with what's going on, we're going to have weeks where those lists don't get anywhere close to matching up. And it's kind of a good check to say, all right, well, I need to get back to what I say I care about. I think that's great advice for these guys. Now, one thing you mentioned was visualization. That's something that I've started to look into more, just because of a few coaches that I really respect have mentioned it. And I don't know how deep you can get into this, but beyond the videos, the highlight reels, what would you recommend players do from a visualization standpoint?
I think, anytime you can sit and you can picture yourself having success. I know there is research out there that backs this up, but, picture yourself having success, whether it's, hitting a breaking ball into the gap. Like, you struggle hitting breaking balls, or that's not something that you do well naturally, or you struggled of it lately. Finding time to, immerse yourself in that thought and see that, and really work on, like, what am I seeing? What am I picking up? What am I paying attention to as I'm getting into, the first part of my swing? Like, how am I set up? What am I looking at? Oh, there it is. I'm hitting it. And I think a lot of this stuff it'd be really easy. Like, I know for me as a young player, like, somebody would have told me that, I would have been like, bro, are you kidding me? Like, I'm going to waste my time doing that. But you know, there's information out there that really backs it up that this is a really good drill for guys to do. And actually going back to video games, and I'll say this, and I have no data to back this up, right? This is like fully my opinion, and I'm not really huge on opinions. I don't think, you know, like if you can't prove it, then it's just an opinion, and you know, opinions aren't necessarily good enough all the time. But I do have an opinion on this. I think back to myself as a high school football player, right? And the video games just made me think about this. So I used to play, you know, a lot of Madden in high school, right? Or in-state football back when I don't even know if they make it anymore, but college football. And was a, you know, pretty good, you know, all-state football player, and, you know, had some opportunities and chose to play baseball instead. But I think back to that, and I learned a lot about how to play the game of football through actually, you know, playing video games. And I would catch myself in practice, football practice, or in a football game, almost like visualizing, like, hey, what would I do in this situation? Or even while I'm playing the game, like picture myself like, you know, hey, like if I get caught in a situation in the game, like this is a great move to make here. If this guy goes this way, you know, you start to visualize that stuff. And I'm a huge football fan. You know, I don't remember myself doing that a ton in baseball. Maybe I should have done more of that in baseball. But you start to look at these guys who are getting, you know, these college football jobs, or dominating in college football, or even these college football coaches who are now in the professional ranks, and the type of offenses and schemes and defenses that they're drawing up. And these are guys who a lot of these guys never played football. So what have they done this whole time? They've visualized it, right? Like they've seen it, they've watched it, and then they've seen it, and in their mind they've seen, like, how do I defend this play? Well, if this guy was to go here, you know, and they start to draw it up, and then they put it on paper, and then they go execute it. And I think it's no difference. I know that's maybe a little far-fetched, and like I said, it's just kind of an opinion and something I've realized, you know, actually been thinking a lot of over the course of this downtime, and how, you know, we can continue to help our players. And that was just, you know, something for me that, you know, I always thought helped. And so I don't see why, you know, I don't see why it couldn't, you know, why it wouldn't help guys, you know, to do the same thing on a baseball field, you know, and put those pieces of the puzzle together in their mind, and watch it, you know, on full display, and then go execute it.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really interesting point. You know, it's easy to criticize like a pitch call or a play until you're actually the one calling the pitches in a video game, or running a play in Madden. And I really don't think the younger players, and probably a lot of players in general, I don't want to pick on the young guys, really have a good approach, because they just go and play. So I think video games might be a good time to kind of slow it down and think a little bit more, like, how am I going to get this guy out? And even as a hitter, like that can be really valuable. So that's cool. I think so many times we like demonize the video games, but I think parents don't get mad at me for this one, but in a like within reason, there's some value to them.
Yeah, no, I really do. Like, I really do. Like, I do think there's value in it. Like I said, I don't know if spending too much time on it is the best idea, but if you're going to do it, then you might as well use it to help something you actually really do value, which is your career.
Yeah, for sure. So we have a couple questions. So why don't we get to one or two of those, and we'll let you go. Enjoy the nice day.
Okay.
So first question, is there a player you've worked with that has really helped you learn the most and change as a coach? And it could be really at any level.
A player? You said a player or a coach?
The question's a player. So as a coach, is there someone that I guess maybe an issue you dealt with a player that really impacted you as a coach?
I don't know if you know, I don't know if I would say one instant as a player. Like, I don't know if I could think back to that, like to one particular moment.
Okay.
But I do think back to some times when I was like a GA and a volunteer at Western Kentucky, and I didn't have a lot to say as far as, you know, like what we were doing. Like, I wasn't running the offense, and I didn't, like, I shouldn't have been. Like, at that time, I was just kind of learning and getting into and learning from some, like, the coaches around me, and they were teaching me a ton. But I do remember, you know, getting questions from guys, like getting questions from players that I don't think they would have asked other coaches. And I started to think of like, why are they asking me these questions? Well, they asked me those questions because they could relate to me. It wasn't that long ago, I was playing at Western Kentucky. They knew I played with some of them. Like we had a good relationship. And they were starting to, they were asking and being open to me with certain questions that I just don't think they would have, for whatever reason, asked other coaches. And so that's something that's always been has always stuck out to me as I've continued my career and gotten further away from playing. Like, how do I continue to be a guy as a coach that these guys can always relate to, and that they always feel comfortable going to ask questions, because that's what you want. Like you want your players to have complete trust in you, that they can come to you, about anything at any time, and you're going to be there for them. And you may not have the right answer. Like, sometimes you're not always going to have the answer, but letting them know that you care, and that you'll take the time to go find the answer. Hey, like, give me a day, give me a couple days, give me a week, whatever it is. Like, I'll have something for you soon. Not just like, giving them an answer because you think they need it right then, but being able to like take a deep breath, take in what the information that they want. It's obviously important to them if they're coming to you with a question, and educating yourself and being relatable to them, and them knowing that when you give them an answer, like it's going to be something that you think can really help their career.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice for coaches, and honestly, really good advice for parents too. Because they're to a large extent the coaches for a lot of these younger guys, and I think if players are more comfortable going to them, knowing they're not going to get their head chopped off by asking a question, it's going to develop into a much better relationship. So I think that helps a few different genres of people. So last question, and we'll let you out of here. So this is from one of our high school hitters. He's probably bored at home with the drills he has. He wants to know if there's any drills or methods you recommend for a hitter his age.
High school hitter.
High school hitter.
Yeah, so it would it would probably depend, obviously, on what you have access to. But I think anything that you can do at home, and I'm going to sound like I'm kind of beating a dead horse with this, that can simulate whatever's going to happen to you in a game and challenge you and get you out of your comfort zone. So obviously you can be as creative as you want with that. If all you have is a broomstick and like some bottle caps off of a bunch of water bottles that you've drinking over the past few weeks, and you can get your dad to go in the backyard and he can throw you bottle caps and with a broomstick, and like it's going to challenge you, and whether it's little wiffle balls and throwing them to you so they're going to move and just create movement, and he's going through a windup and you're having to pick it up out of his hand and do all that and look at the right places and make adjustments and things like that in your swing. I think that type of training for me is going to translate more to the game than it would just sitting there and like hitting off of a tee into a net over and over and over again, and like doming yourself up about, hey, what can I do? My mechanics are wrong and all this. Like, I just think that if you're talking about your training translating into a game, which is ultimately the only thing we're trying to do in practice is get guys to have more success in the game, then the closer we can get to that type of challenge, that type of failure rate in our practice, the better it's going to translate, and the more easy the game's going to be, the slower the game's going to be for us. We've all been there when the game is just extremely fast. And a lot of times that's because, our practice and the way we train just isn't conducive to a game-like environment. So whatever you got to do, get creative, with it. I gave some, little examples there, but, obviously if you have a guy that can throw to you and is going to sit there and get up on a mound or even closer and shrink the distance and really challenge you, then that's ideal. But not everybody has that right now. We're in a really cool time to get creative with that type of stuff. And so that would kind of be my suggestions.
Yeah, and I think the T trap is definitely something a lot of these guys are falling into right now. So that's awesome. And guys, before you think the bottle cap thing is a little foolish, Latin Americans kind of do it, make
no
it
doubt.
really hit. So try it out, because I promise you it's more difficult than you're thinking in your head.
Yeah.
Well, Casey, that's it for us. I really appreciate your time today. I'm hoping that we can take some of this, especially the practice playing stuff, into our practices the next couple of weeks. But thank you again. Enjoy the nice day with your family. Guys, let's all thank
For
Casey
sure, man.
for coming on.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.